Welcome to the USgamer podcast, the only podcast on the internet that's not talking about Game of Thrones. I'm your host, Kat Bailey, and with me today
is Mike Williams, reviews editor of USgamer.
And Nadia Oxford, staff writer. I can talk about dragons all you like, but we won't talk about Game of Thrones. But if you want to talk about dragons, look me up.
And I'm Caty McCarthy, another staff writer, and Game of Thrones is fine, but, I mean, let's talk Twin Peaks.
The only reason we're not talking about Game of Thrones is because I have not seen the finale yet, though the internet seems bound and determined to spoil me on whatever the heck happens, and I'm kind of afraid that I'm not going to actually be able to watch it until next week because I am traveling this week, and my partner is at Burning Man, so I'm not going to be able to actually watch it until next week.
Kat, you play JRPGs, you don't need Game of Thrones.
I mean, maybe I would play a Game of Thrones JRPG. That would be kind of interesting, I suppose.
Isn't that Skyrim?
No, it's not. Game of Thrones has politics or something. I don't know, and complexities and incest. Skyrim does not have incest.
Lots
Yet.
of incest.
I'm just going to say you might as well come to terms with being spoiled. You got a week and everything is about to get real. I mean, you're going to be around a whole bunch of other
I'm surprised
nerds.
if you've avoided it so far. Like, there are spoilers everywhere. People just going for it in
Like
headlines.
landmines. Yeah, I've been spoiled on at least one, I would say, fairly major event. Only in kind of like soft focus, not like I don't have any context for what exactly happened, but the headlines like made it pretty obvious that something happened. And there's some other weird things where I'm like going, what the heck? And here's the thing. I'm not that concerned about spoilers because, I mean, back in the day when I used to watch Babylon 5 on its broadcast run, and yes, I was one of the nerds who did that, I would read the recap of the episode before I watched it.
Oh my goodness
because I was
gracious.
so desperate for new information. I had to know what happened next. So
Yeah, I don't care about spoilers at all.
Same.
Not even the slightest.
I just accept it. Like, it's just gonna happen. But I've gotten lucky with, like, Game of Thrones and Twin Peaks, which I usually watch after. I usually watch, like, when, like, my partner gets home if he's out or whatever. Like, I wait until we're both, like, can watch it together, and I haven't gotten spoiled this season for both those, so it's good.
I was grateful, however, that I caught up to the second to last episode because over the weekend I went out to brunch and they were doing Game of Thrones themed brunch and they had HBO on multiple TVs looping the most recent episode leading up to the finale. And I was like, well, it's a good thing I watched this episode already because
Yeah.
I would basically have to keep my head like down, not being even looking up. Yeah, but anyway, we got a lot to cover this week. We're going to be talking about the Rabbids review. Nadia has some thoughts on The Secret of Mana remake. We're going to talk a little bit about Absolver, a game that I somehow don't know that much about. And the main topic, do we even want Half-Life 3? But before we get to all of that, we have to have the most important conversation. Caty and Mike, Death Note, go.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
I thought it was really fun.
I thought it was a B-grade schlocky film that was not up to Adam Wingard's best. So I didn't particularly enjoy it as a Death Note film, and I didn't particularly think that he executed on that specific version that he was aiming for all that well either. Now, that said, I don't particularly have a problem with the film, so like whatever. Like, I've seen a lot of B-grade horror movies on Netflix, and I don't like. Okay.
I would.
How does it differ from the anime?
It's more fun.
Oh, Jesus Lord.
The anime is like extremely boring. I feel like Death Note's always something that I've liked in theory. Like, I really love the concept of it, and I think it has good characters. But just the anime is so boring, and it's just not good, in my opinion.
Mike and I are just here making faces, just so you all know, listeners. Like,
I heard the manga's really good. I've heard the manga's really good.
It is.
But I've
is
never given
very
it a shot because I just didn't enjoy the anime. I was like curious about this movie because I was like, I don't really like Death Note. Like I didn't like the anime, but I guess I'm like whatever, curious to see this. And I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really fun and stupid in like a good way. Like it's not like a good movie by any means. It's totally just like very corny. And I don't know. I liked the like how it wasn't like the same thing. It felt very different from like the Death Note, from like Japan. So in that way, it felt better because it wasn't just like this weird, awkward like retread. It was like its own vision. It was super different. Had a different like tone to it too. It's not like perfect by any means. Like I do wish there was a little more of like the L versus Light kind of drama, like how they're both like super geniuses, and I feel like they only really make L seem like a genius, and then Light's just
an idiot with a notebook.
Yeah, yeah.
So anime and manga Death Note are like a supernatural version of The Departed, where it's L versus Light, and at a certain point, Light joins a part of the police force. So, like, it's one of, like, the monsters in the building, like the serial killers, a part of the team, and sort of that weird cat and mouse play. And that's the fun part of Death Note, the anime and manga. Death Note Netflix is Heathers, but supernatural.
Yeah, I love it. Heathers is one of my favorite movies, so that's what you should know about me, I guess, and my taste.
What is Heathers?
What?
Yeah.
Okay, so
oh my god.
So Heathers is this old 80s movie, but to get to the actual point is basically like the L is a part of it. L is the guy that's chasing Light, but it's really about Light and Mina is her name?
I think her name's
Misa.
Mia in this,
Or
but
Misa.
Misa in the anime.
In the original,
yeah.
and it's like Mina or Mia in this one. And the Netflix one is more about their relationship and sort of their weird vying for the Death Note, whereas Misa in the anime and manga was a completely different and I would say probably not as good character.
Yeah.
Death Note has a legacy of a lot of really bad adaptations, including multiple bad Japanese movies.
And I've seen them. I actually saw them in the theater. They came to Toronto, so a bunch of nerds went and packed the theater and saw it, and it was bad but fun in its own way. I think Light's father was played by the Iron Chef, so that was pretty cool.
Nice.
He did a good job. But yeah,
Japanese live-action adaptations, I think the kind of overwrought writing and acting that goes into your typical anime doesn't always translate extremely well.
No, it really doesn't.
Yeah. If you ever like are looking at American adaptations and you're like, well, the problem is they don't stick close to the source material too much. Watch most of the Japanese live-action adaptations. Most of them are slavish to the source material.
Yeah.
I watched Space Battleship Yamato, the live-action adaptation, in the theaters while I was in Japan, and it was one of the cheesiest things that I've ever watched. It was actually pretty amazing. It was straight out of the early 80s with all of its action tropes and everything, and it was not slavish to the source material. It was so disappointing. They changed so much about what made the original great. So when Yamato 2199 came out, it redeemed it, I think, but... So Caty, you're giving your recommendation for Death Note, and Mike is not giving the recommendation, huh?
I would say that I watch a lot of bad horror movies on Netflix, a lot of B and C grade horror movies on Netflix, and this slots right in with them, and I don't feel like I wasted my time. Because it's free. I paid for it.
It's wait. It is not free, my friend. It is on. You are subscribing to Netflix.
Correct.
This idea that it's it's free, whatever. No, you're not. They're getting your money all the time.
But I feel I've gotten my money in other stuff that I've watched on Netflix.
Yeah,
so
you
this
take the
is
bad
a
with the good.
value add of stuff. And if I had paid $14 to see it in a theater, I would
I'd be pissed.
Probably more unhappy with it.
You're always paying. Sometimes it's just with your valuable life force. in your time. You only have a finite number of amount of time on this earth. You only have a finite number of heartbeats, and you spent
part of them
2 hours worth of those heartbeats on this movie.
I would like to point out we are pop culture critics, and so I must be at the top of the list on everything. I must watch all Game of Thrones and every Twin Peaks and see Death Note and watch all the Marvel movies.
Yeah, if you do it, that means I don't have to.
Yes. Thank you, Mike, for taking a bullet for all of us.
Yes, we appreciate it. Your cat is very cute.
Yeah, that's the fun thing about a site where, I mean, being a video game journalist, like, USgamer may not cover this material technically. We are one of the few game sites that doesn't venture into pop culture and talking about Game of Thrones and such. We stick pretty closely to games, but just you have to be pop culture relevant, whether you want to or not.
Definitely.
As much as I want to stick my head in a hole and just go la 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 la. But
you kids and your Game of Thrones and your musical chairs, whatever you call it.
I still haven't finished Breaking Bad. That show ended like 7 years ago.
I haven't started.
I mean, you should start. It's really good.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
I'm bad with TV series. I get bored really easily. Unless it's animated, if it's a cartoon, then I'm cool.
Yeah, and that's the problem. So like average or bad stuff, I can understand people skipping because there's so much good stuff that we don't even have time to get to.
Yeah, but you should watch Death Note.
Something that is not average or bad, and you should definitely check out, is the Mario vs. Rabbids Kingdom Battles for Nintendo Switch. And by the way, I literally cannot believe that those words just came out of my mouth.
What a future we live in.
Mike, you reviewed it. You liked it. A lot of the headlines that I'm seeing around the internet are along the lines of, this Mario XCOM game is better than any that it has any right to be. And you seem to be sharing that sentiment. And what are your thoughts? Why is it so good?
It's a smart, solid streamlining of the XCOM formula. And while the Rabbids may be annoying minions to many, it still retains a lot of the charm of the Mario series. So it's just like, oh, this is a Mario XCOM game that's pretty streamlined and gets rid of a lot of the cruft or more annoying mechanics that hardcore XCOM or Disgaea or whatever players would prefer to see.
My understanding is that the Rabbids kind of overwhelm it a little bit.
What do you think, Caty? You saw it on the stream. I feel like they don't particularly add anything, but I also find myself not as annoyed by them because for the most part, I don't really think of the Rabbid versions of the characters as characters, and then the rest of them are all enemies. So
yeah, like humor seemed annoying from what I saw in the stream, but I don't think it's like super in your face about it, you know? It's not like there's a buttload of cutscenes and they're all like just like dumb Rabbids humor. But like it's there, but I don't think it like is super like, I feel like if it was saturated with it, I would be super annoyed by it, but it didn't seem like it's very prevalent. Like it's definitely around because it is technically a Rabbids game too, but it's not, crazy.
I have heard that the Rabbids are extremely popular in the UK.
Yeah, I've heard
which is completely new to me. Like that the Rabbids are a big deal over there.
Yeah, apparently in Europe they're huge. It's like, well, they like Jerry Lewis, so.
So someone was pointing out in the stream, like we mentioned minions, and they stopped and they were like in the stream, like they were like, "Oh God, they're minions!
Yeah,
they're just the minions."
Yep.
And when
they came before the minions too.
They came before the minions, and their cartoon, I think it ran in the U.S., but I think it got more play in France and Europe.
Yeah,
where it was created.
The minions, I still think that they're based on the serve bots from Mega Man Legend, which is very obscure,
really
yes, but the mannerisms are all there.
Another thing that's very popular in the UK, apparently, Crash Bandicoot.
Huge.
Not surprising.
They have interesting tastes over there. It must be said. We know this because we have a couple of guides people from the UK who occasionally fill us in. It's like, no, Crash Bandicoot, big deal in the UK. Also the Rabbids. And I'm like, okay, whatever you say.
Mario not a big deal? Like,
Yeah.
that
No,
was the weird one? I was like,
Yeah, well, a lot of that was to do with the fact that the NES came out at a later date in Europe than it did over here, and I guess the marketing was pretty weird. Nintendo put a lot of effort early on into its marketing of the NES over in the UK and such, but I guess they always struggled with games coming out kind of late or being too expensive, and I guess the Sega Genesis, especially in Australia, had a huge hold on Europe, so as a consequence, Mario just didn't catch on in quite the same way, I don't think. You talk to people from the UK and they always go on and on about the ZX Spectrum and the Sega Mega Drive and pretty much anything but the NES for the most part.
Yeah, I think I told Hiron, who's one of our guides guys in the UK, I said, Rare's early games aren't that good except for maybe Jetpack, and he nearly, bust a vein. And it's like, well, they're not that good. I played them on the Rare replay. I was like, oh boy, I can try Rare's classic catalog. Oh, this is kind of boring. Saberwolf makes no sense. I like him in Killer Instinct, but I don't like the game he's based on.
Nadia, are you planning on picking up Mario vs. Rabbids, or is it just you have it? Okay,
I have it. We downloaded it for our Switch. I'm not going to start playing it until my husband gets to play it first. But right now I'm in the middle of Ys 8, or not in the middle. I just started. So I will definitely get to it, though. I have been kind of looking forward to it since E3 revealed, hey, this game isn't horrible. So
I have to say that this game should be in my wheelhouse, but I don't think that I'm going to necessarily pick it up because I don't know. I think the Rabbids are a bit much. And
yeah, that's what my apprehension with it.
And I almost feel like Ubisoft and Nintendo made this strategic partnership because Nintendo looked at it and said, Rabbids are a big deal in Europe, and this is like a great opportunity to make a lot of inroads in Europe with the Switch by matching these very popular characters with our very popular characters, and as long as the game is really good, then we could have something going on here. But I find the Rabbids just insufferable as characters. I find them worse than Minions.
Oh yeah,
because
they're more ugly.
They're uglier and they're stupider.
Yeah,
they really are.
They're in the same realm, definitely.
These terrible rabbit things with bad teeth that just rely entirely on kind of chaotic humor, falling down everywhere, farting. Yeah, I mean,
I see why kids like them.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
I don't understand what Europeans what their excuse is, but kids, I understand.
And seeing them wearing the actual costumes from Mario is a bit much to me. And why does Mario have a gun now?
Yeah,
I have something.
It's not a gun. It's a Mega Man style arm cannon.
Okay. Do you want to explain this to us?
The same thing. It's
Well, someone's got to use the
has a
equalizer.
gun. Peach has a gun.
Go Peach.
Okay. So Peach actually has a gun.
That's his thing, right?
Yeah, he has his vacuum cleaner from Luigi's Mansion is a sniper rifle.
Luigi is such a sniper personality. Oh my god! He is 2 seconds away from going completely off the rails. But I think he's in his moment where he's just so keen and focused, and he could totally take out someone from 200 feet.
And as I pointed out to Caty, when you first save Luigi in the game, the Beepo that's the extra character that's the in-game personification of your cursor, says, "Oh, great! Now we have Mario and Lyle." And Luigi's face is just he's like Llewellyn, and Luigi's like, "Oh, Llewellyn." Just no respect for Luigi.
Poor Luigi. I love
whatsoever.
Luigi so much. No wonder he's gonna go off the rails one day and kill us all, though. We'll totally all deserve it.
I'll be honest, I like the idea of having an XCOM style game on the Switch because I feel that genre can work really well with the Nintendo Switch, but I would rather just have XCOM on it because I think that XCOM 2 could actually fit really well on the Nintendo Switch. And not only that, but I mean, God, it's on everything else, right? XCOM is on iPad, for God's sake. Mm-hmm. So I don't think that it's completely out of the realm of possibility for them to be able to port it over. And yes, I know this is just port begging and everything, but
speaking of, XCOM 2 War of the Chosen also came out today.
Yes, it did. And of the two, that's the one that I'm probably going to play.
Yeah, and it makes your XCOM 2 game even harder with harder enemies, but it also adds a little bit of relationship in.
I don't know that it necessarily makes it harder. It just adds to the strategic depth because you have... I played a little bit of it. You have these supervillain aliens running around now who will come in and really mess up your party if you happen to be in a mission in their region and everything. But by the same token, you also have different factions who have their own abilities that are very powerful, who can come in and help you out. So I think that it balances out for the most part. Plus, you get relationship bonuses that incur actually very powerful abilities and lots more weapons and things like that. So I think that by and large, I don't know that it's necessarily harder. It's just deeper and more interesting.
You heard that, folks. Like I said, relationships. It's the first step in the future of XCOM 3 and Fire Emblem's bringing relationships to every facet of every strategy game.
I mean, relationships are a great facet of a strategy game because they can add so much to the individual gameplay, and plus it makes you feel more attached. When you see these two characters and they're in love, and one of them goes down and the other freaks out and starts killing everybody, you feel that, man, right?
Oh, my heart.
I agree. I think
your OTP has been broken up. They're gone. What are you gonna do?
They will never love again.
Mike, would you recommend Rabbids for somebody who maybe an XCOM fan?
Strategically, I think so, but I think it's. I think XCOM fans want something a bit harder and more punishing. There's a sense of self-flagellation in playing XCOM at times, and I think. Mario Rabbids does not have that same sense and feel to it.
I don't know. I don't know that I play XCOM just because it's hard. I play XCOM because I love the feeling of putting together especially a customized team that I'm taking on to these missions. I love the sense of progression that it imparts as you... I don't know, you're trying to capture alien weapons, you're slowly developing your weaponry and everything. You're starting to uncover the secret of everything that's going on with your enemies. That sense of fear the first time you encounter a new enemy and go, what the heck is that? And what is it doing to my guys? Oh my God. There is a sense of fear of permadeath. There's no permadeath in Mario vs. Rabbids, right?
No, and everything else, they're running into new enemies and being like, oh God, our new combination of enemies, and having the fear that's still here. I just feel like there's an extra layer of evil to XCOM.
You don't say.
You mean the fact that you can have... I think I created one of my own characters. I created me in XCOM 2. And that was a mistake because my character ended up dying and getting reanimated and chased one of the teammates out of the map as I was frantically trying to get them away, at least. And to my knowledge, they are still there. The rotting corpse of me is still being mind controlled.
Oh dear.
So that's an image.
Yeah, and
makes for a good story though.
XCOM has moments where you'll be like, "Oh man, everything is going great. The squad composition is great. We got great position." And then, maybe you'll miss a shot, even though you had, a 70% chance to hit it.
Oh, yeah, that's total BS.
Your character will get stressed out, and maybe that was your frontline fighter, and now they're, freaking out. And that, XCOM can turn really bad very quickly on the random.
Yeah, when everything goes completely wrong and your characters are trapped and you're thinking, okay, I've got a 90% chance to hit. Oh, I totally just missed.
There's that 1 out of 10 for you.
That's amazing. The worst. And you're point blank, for God's sake. They're right there.
Yeah, yeah. See, whereas like Mario Rabbids, like hit chance is 0, 50%, which is a flip of the coin, or 100. Mm-hmm. Like if you're at point blank, you will hit. That's it.
I always thought that. So there was a game. It's a Steambot. You know what I'm talking about, Nadia.
Yeah, SteamWorld Heist.
SteamWorld Heist. That's the one. I thought they had a pretty good solution to that, actually, where they made it kind of a skill thing, where when you took aim, you could actually aim, and if you can aim properly and shoot, they're dead, right? Yeah. If you can get a headshot in, you will do bonus damage.
Yes.
And you have all the time you need to actually aim it. But the trick is being able to pull off trick shots and properly bounce it around. Like, that is so satisfying when you can line it up.
And not every bot is capable of that. Some of them use like close range cannons. Some of them use like friendly cannons that do friendly fire. That's a great strategy game, and if you haven't played it, I recommend it.
Yeah, I asked them when they announced SteamWorld Dig 2. I was like, so what's the chances of us getting SteamWorld collections for Switch? Yeah. And they were like, we're thinking about it.
Yes.
Oh, man, I would totally get SteamWorld Heist on Switch, even though I've already finished it.
Yeah, same. And I did the DLC as well.
Yeah, it's really good.
It's a great game. So
what I'm saying is, instead of playing Rabbids, perhaps you should consider getting SteamWorld Heist. But Mario vs. Rabbids Kingdom Battles is also good. Caty, do you have any final thoughts, having like spent an hour watching Mike play it and everything?
I'm still like hesitant with it just because I really don't like Rabbids at all. Like at all. But I don't know, I think it's a good looking game, like in terms, like they really nailed the style of it. It's like really colorful and bright and like fun looking, and I dig strategy games. I don't play like too many of them. Like Fire Emblem's pretty much the most I've waded into them. But I don't know, like I'm not gonna rush out to buy it. I'll probably just wait until I have free time and I'm looking for something on my Switch. But I feel like I'm interested in it, but not like super dying to play it or anything. So.
I'm probably generalizing, but it strikes me that there are a couple of types of gamers. One type is looking for a very strong narrative experience, and the other type is looking for the kind of experience that just arises from customization and their own experiences and that kind of thing. And strategy games can kind of straddle that, I suppose, a little bit. Like you have your Fire Emblems, which are much more story oriented, and then you have your XCOMs, which are much more what's the word when storytelling just naturally arises out of mechanics? I can never remember these types of words, but you know what I'm talking about. And
like
Mario emergent gameplay. Yeah. There you go. Emergent storytelling. I like emergent storytelling. How strong is the story in Mario versus Rabbids, Mike?
Okay, I mean, there are like little cutscenes in between, but I mean, I don't necessarily play for that. Like, it does a good job of being like, oh, here are the Mario characters. You love Mario characters. They're doing Mario things. But it's not like it has a framing story, but I wouldn't be like, oh, you should watch every minute of Mario plus Rabbids
watch every minute of Mario plus Rabbids. What I'm saying, Caty, is that I'm not surprised that you don't play strategy games, because it's always struck me that you are much more of a storytelling type person.
I mean, I've watched a lot of XCOM. Like, I've watched streams of it. It's just always seemed like something I was telling Mike about this on the stream. Like, I'm a very impatient type of player, just in general. I'm not very patient, and I feel like strategy games require a lot of patience. And that's typically not how I play games.
It jumps back to the
typical millennial
argument that we had about challenge before. In that in certain strategy games, you can definitely put a lot of effort into something and then have all of that effort end up for naught.
Yes.
In XCOM, it's less of a problem because you can just jump back to the save before that round. But even then, like, you could be like pretty deep in a round in a mission, like maybe like 20 minutes, and then everything goes wrong because a random alien appeared in a corner of the map that you decided to explore.
Hey, how's it going?
Hello. All right. So Mario vs. Rabbids Kingdom Battles is out on the Nintendo Switch now, and you should go check out Mike's review. In the meantime, another game that we have a review going of right now, that is Absolver. And frankly, I don't know much about this, but it's apparently been something that the indie community has been following for quite a while, and Caty's been playing it, and apparently it's very hard.
Yeah, so to do like a quick summary of what it is, it's like built as like an online melee action game. So you're kind of plopped into this little, I don't want to call it like Metroidvania-esque, but I guess it kind of is like that, where you're just kind of retreading this small environment. There's like different hub areas, and there's different areas you can go to from there. And it's like a lot of backtracking. But basically, it's like a very complex brawler. Like, you have these 4 stances you can go into, and then you have moves that are like aligned with these stances. But you have like a light attack, and then you have like a heavy that switches you to another stance, usually depending on how you map it. So like it's like really customizable, because there's like, I almost want to say like hundreds. That's probably way off base or something. But there's like so many moves you can learn, and the only way you learn moves is by fighting other people and dodging their moves successfully. So like the more you dodge like someone doing a specific kick or a specific punch or something, the more you learn that, and then over time you'll learn that ability and you can equip it. So you can really like blend your own fighter according to like how you want to fight. And there's also different classes, so you have a different like sub ability. Like the character I'm playing as has like an ability to absorb, so it's like another way to like dodge in a way. It's kind of like, okay, I'm like absorbing this attack, but you also are like vulnerable to other attacks while you're doing it. But it's a really interesting game, because like really complex, almost, I don't want to say to a detriment, but it's like, I feel like it teeters on that. And I do think when you're, because it's like an open world or semi-open world multiplayer game, so you're fighting a lot of AI control. That's mainly what you're fighting, but you're also fighting other players, because they just pop up in your world. So you can like come across someone, and they'll either want to fight you. Like, I've had people just chase me, because if I don't want to fight, I'll just run away. I'm like, I don't want to deal with this right
so
now.
they'll be like, come back here, swing
yeah,
your
and then
fist.
they literally will like chase me, and it gets like really scary.
That's
It's
mean.
like, oh my god, this person's not like letting up. And then you have to like, sometimes I'm like, okay, I just gotta fight this person. And there have been sometimes where like they like are super aggressive towards me, and then I come out on top, and it feels like really good. But yeah, and then you also have the ability to revive other people. So if you see someone like getting like killed, you can run over, revive them, and then like you guys can do co-op, and like through, because there's like little emotes and stuff, and you can like team up. Or they can reject you, and then usually it leads to a fight. So it's like this really interesting like wordless multiplayer dynamic, where like you kind of learn from other people. Like I like one of the first people I ever did co-op with was just some random player, and we were like playing together for like hours. I didn't know this person. They just like teamed up with, or I saw them like in need, because they were fighting like 3 people at once, 3 AIs, and I think that's where the game suffers, is like when you're fighting more than one thing at once, it's like really not, it's not great. It's like really clunky, and it doesn't like feel as like fluid as it does with 1 versus 1. So I like ran over and I helped take out the other people with this person, and then we like did co-op, and we took on a few bosses, which is like pretty much the main goal of the game, is to take out these masked bosses that are like in the environment. There's like, I want to say like 15 overall, maybe a little bit less than that. But yeah, and there's a story there, but it's like not a super dense story or anything. It's basically just like a very strong mechanical multiplayer experience that focuses really heavily on melee, which you don't really see often in games unless it's just like a traditional 2D fighter or whatever. But yeah, I guess this is like a very long-winded way to say it's like a very interesting game. it definitely has flaws, and it's not like a perfect game, but it's definitely unlike most things I've played before.
It sounds a bit
Show
like
me a perfect
Flower,
game.
but you can like kick the shit out of each other.
Yeah.
Not Flower. Journey.
That's an interesting comparison.
Well,
Do you mean Journey? Yeah.
Yeah, but I compared it to Journey in my review because it reminded me a lot, like just like meeting other players randomly, like really reminded me of Journey. Especially that one first encounter where like I saved them from like basically dying, and then we became friends for a little bit and hung out, and then they left, and I was like, oh man, that person's my friend. Like, I'm so sad.
I wanted beers.
And then then I run into someone else, and they like just want to fight, and it's just like, you're not as fun as this other person.
Yeah.
But
because what I played it at E3, and it was a very deeply mechanical game.
yeah, it's super.
In that each move has a direction that you attack from, and then it's either punch or kick. So you build the combat deck. So from any one stance or direction you're facing, you can have an attack. But then the moves also change your position. So while one move may have you facing forward, when that move is finished, you'll be in the backwards stance, at which time you'll move to that whole, whatever you have set up on your combat deck of your backward stance. So it's not just building which moves you have in each stance, it's also thinking about your combos, like where your chains go.
Yeah, it's really like I spent like a good like half hour at one point just going, because I unlocked a bunch of abilities. I was like, oh, I should like try actually building this like combat deck to be something cool. And I just like spent so long just practicing, and I was like, okay, this is a good combo right here. And like just like the more you play, the more you learn, and you level up pretty quickly. Like pretty much every time you defeat someone, you get like some experience. But there's so many fights across the world. It's not like you're like hunting for fights ever. Like there's just AI hanging around. I'm not positive if this is right or not, but I wouldn't be surprised if defeating players nets you more like experience or something. Like I'm not positive that's like true or not, but I kind of got that feeling.
It's usually the case.
Yeah, and those fights are obviously harder because you're fighting against like an actual person, and the bosses are really hard too because they're like they each have their own. I don't know, like they're just very tough. But yeah, it's like an interesting game. There is like a lot of grinding, or what feels like grinding in a way. Like, so you find these altars, which are kind of like your checkpoints that you hit. And there's this one boss I've been trying to beat, and there's like a pretty long area you have to like go through to get up to this like tower where they're staying. And there's just like so many enemies on the way. So it's like a lot of time I'm just like using my healing ability so I can be like at full health by the time I get to the top, and then they just like take me out, and then I'm like back to the bottom. And I feel like I keep leveling up on this road, but I'm still not strong enough to defeat this like person. So I like ended up like leaving that area for a bit because I was like, I just need to do other stuff maybe before I come back here. But I felt like I did that like maybe 20 times of like definitely leveling up, tweaking my combat deck, and it still didn't feel like it was enough, and that was like kind of frustrating. And I feel like there's a lot of that in this game. But I do think its high point is definitely in the player encounters, because it's super interesting and it feels like very natural. And I feel like good multiplayer that feels natural is so hard to really accomplish, and they really, I think, nailed it here.
This game feels tailor-made for streaming because I mean, first of all, the crazy player encounters that you're apt to have, and then it seems to me that there's a really high skill threshold, so that the people who are the absolute best at Absolver will end up being, I would say, fairly popular streams, which makes me wonder if Absolver ends up catching on. I wonder if it'll be because of streaming and that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's definitely the kind of game that is tailored. Like what you put into it is what you get out of it from what I've played. And I get the feeling that it's somewhat closer to martial arts. Like the idea of martial arts and actually learning a style and katas and stuff like that. Like from when I used to take, like it's as close as you can get to that in a video game.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's pretty cool because obviously martial arts have been a thing in one way or another going back to, I don't know, probably the Atari and brawlers and that kind of thing. But it's always been automated, right? Where you take over a character and they have all of the skills already in place. And sure, maybe they'll learn them, but the second that they learn that skill, they're a master at it, right?
Yeah.
Where a line that I see repeated over and over and over again whenever I read reviews is, I feel like a newborn baby in this game. I feel completely helpless. That's an interesting feeling to have, and I think it's pretty powerful to grow from that feeling of helplessness all the way up into something powerful and something competent, I suppose. Okay, so if you want to see more thoughts from Caty, you should check out her review on progress on the site. Caty, when are you planning on having that wrapped up?
Hopefully this week. So ideally, I'm trying to finish it by Thursday or Friday and updating it whenever I finish it, I'll just wrap it up, write my full thoughts.
Indeed. Okay, last thing before we move on. Nadia, you have the floor to rant about the visuals in the Secret of Mana remake that was announced last week. Go.
I don't want to rant. I'm not the ranting type, I don't think.
That's not true.
No, here's the thing.
You can get your rant on. It's pretty amazing, actually. Just here, allow me to get you started. Disney Afternoon Collection on Switch.
Well, let me tell you okay. Here's the thing about Secret of Mana. I am excited about this remake, which is coming out to PS4 and to Vita, if I'm not mistaken. But it has like a kind of a pseudo 3D style, I guess a 2.5D style is the way I described it in my article. And it's very much the style they used for Adventures of Mana, which is a 2.5 remake of Final Fantasy Adventure. But whereas Final Fantasy Adventure, you're kind of upgrading from the Game Boy. There's no way to go but up from there. So I think that the 2.5D style worked fine for Adventures of Mana. But Secret of Mana on the Nintendo, the Super Nintendo, and the iOS, actually, because it has sprite graphics as well, that's already a beautiful looking game. The iOS version of the game redraws all the sprites, and they're just kind of, I guess, redoing it again for the PlayStation 4 and the PS Vita. And I don't really know if that's necessary. I just feel like they could even just upscale somehow, make them nicer, the sprites for the iOS version of the game, because I feel like not enough people saw that. And just put that on Vita and PS4. Of course, they could have the best of both worlds and just give us the Secret of Mana collection for the Switch in America. That'd be nice. Let's do that, Square. Why don't we have everything? Let's have all the pie. Why are you only giving us slices of the pie? Let's have all the pie. But I don't know, Secret of Mana, it just seems to me like, I don't want to sound like, graphics are the best, they got to be perfect or else I won't play. But it's a game that, I don't know, it's not as well suited for 2.5D from what I can tell. Like, the gameplay screenshots that I've seen look okay, but some of the cinemas
okay is being a bit generous. I think it's pretty ugly, to be honest.
Yeah. It could be a lot better. Let's say that. Let's say it can be a lot better. And Secret of Mana is a game that deserves it. It's just a great game.
I know why they do it. I know why they turn these into kind of 2.5D games with it kind of looks like very light cell shading, why they're reusing a lot of the old stuff. It saves money and it allows this to happen, but the second I see that is a huge turn off for me, and it just does not make me want to play it. It reminds me of way back in the day when Rocket Knight came out on the 360 as a kind of a remake.
I remember that.
It was a 2.5D remake, and it was just so basic. I think that art can contribute so much to the appeal of a game, and when they really nail it, that makes it so much better. Case in point, I'm playing Sonic Mania right now.
Yeah.
If they had made that 2.5D, I mean, it would, I suppose the levels and everything would still sing, but there's a style to it. There's so much to love about it. I was just finished Studiopolis Zone, and the second part where you start up and Dr. Robotnik appears like right behind you in this huge, beautiful, pixelated, beautifully animated giant screen TV. It's a striking really moment, cool. Right?
Yeah.
That wouldn't necessarily be the same if it were not in kind of that pixelated style that it is. And I get that pixel art is not an easy thing to pull off, but I think the extra effort can really make a game stand apart. And the worst thing you can do is to just be another person at just another game in the crowd.
Yeah.
What do you guys think about this?
I mean, one of the things that draws me to games is a very strong art direction, like a sense of authorship, I guess, to put it like blankly. And yeah, like when I saw this remake, it felt kind of like lifeless in a way. Like everything I've seen, I've never played Secret of Mana, and I've always wanted to because I've always heard it's really good. But like the pixel art in that game's good. It's fine. Like I don't understand the need to like make it look like a generic Tales of game. You know, it doesn't like that. It'd be different if it was like a remake, you know, where like they like made it look like super HD and like amazing. But this just looks like low poly, like early PS2 era.
Yeah, it really does.
It doesn't look good. I don't know. Like it just looks off, and I don't like maybe in action it looks better or something. But just like that trailer didn't do much to like make me excited. Like if anything, I'm just gonna play it on the SNES Classic. It's like I don't
yeah, if you can get one.
Yeah, I mean I'm getting one, so unless it gets canceled.
Caty is lucky.
I'm
lucky.
I'm gonna offer up 3 points. One, to those who say that for the re-release they could have just kept the original style. Sure, they could have. They just did the second and such a collection. But more likely they would have done what they are doing for the Dragon Quest 1, 2, and 3 relaunches on PS4 and 3DS in Japan, which is this weird mobile, like you've seen it on a lot of mobile styles where they like update the sprites and it just doesn't look good. And I think what they did looks better than that would have in my mind. Especially looking again at the Dragon Quest 1, 2, and 3 PS4 and 3DS versions, which just weird, cheap looking, super smooth sprites.
I think Dragon Quest V, for example, looks extremely good on, say, the DS.
Yeah.
Like I think that's a good medium to hit right there.
Yeah, but again, that's not the point that they were probably going to go. You either get the original or you get this weird, super smooth, because we've seen it on a ton of mobile ports, and it never looks good.
The really cheap looking sprites.
Yeah.
Have you
the
seen
thing is that I don't think you have to. I don't know. I almost don't feel like there's a point to even making them if you're going to go in that cheap of a direction. And maybe that's me just being superficial, and you can look past the graphics to something and be able to appreciate the gameplay. Maybe I should just appreciate the fact that lots of people are being able to play Final Fantasy VI, for example, on iPad that wouldn't be able to otherwise play it. But you really legitimately lose something when you get away from that kind of art direction. It is a visual medium at the end of the day, and it disappoints me.
I would love to see more art style in the styles of like the Final Fantasy IV Complete Collection, like what they did there. Like they actually put like a lot of effort into it.
Or a game like Shovel Knight, to be perfectly honest. I don't know. There is a reason that Blizzard is one of the most popular publishers in the business, and some of it is accessibility. Some of it is that they have some of the best designers in the business, but a lot of it is that they put out something that is instantly appealing to the eye.
Yeah.
Why did Overwatch immediately grab everybody's attention? Because the first time you log in and you're selecting a character and you're looking at all the cool little animations, and they're instantly just have so much appeal to them. You want to play as them. You just go, oh, wow, this looks amazing. I'm in, right? And then from that, it doesn't have to sell you on anything else. So,
well, see, I agree. I don't think the Secret of Mana remake looks great. I don't think it looks awful either.
Yeah.
It doesn't really bother me either way. What is clear to me is that they're only probably getting as much money as Tokyo RPG Factory got for I Am Setsuna.
Yeah.
Sure.
And Lost Sphere, which looks better, but still in that same vein. Mm-hmm. And my hope is that since Adventures and this use a similar art style, that they will have planned for Seiken Densetsu 3. And since the first two got full releases, this would be our chance to get a full worldwide translated release of Seiken Densetsu 3.
Yes.
For the first time.
Please.
Yeah, that'd be nice, I suppose. I mean, no. I would absolutely love it if that happened. But as it stands, I probably will be going with Caty and playing Secret of Mana on the SNES Classic if I can get hold of it.
I'll play them all. I'll just give me all the Secret of Manas. I'll play them all.
Keep going.
I mean,
and I suppose that makes me niche. Maybe a lot of people just don't care. And in fact, I've read that when you go to a 2D kind of look, a lot of people automatically get turned off because they only want 3D for some reason. It's the same in the movies. Kids seem to hate. Kids equate animation with being cheap, and they equate 3D movies with being like big budget and expensive and good, which
stupid
blows my freaking mind.
Yeah.
But
God bless the children, but they're dumb.
This is my soapbox. This is what I'm standing up and saying. This is what I want.
My final thoughts on the whole thing is I will play the game no matter what because it's Secret of Mana. But I am most concerned. I agree with you, Kat. Visuals mean a lot, especially in a retro game like Secret of Mana, which had beautiful sprites to begin with. But how it plays is ultimately king, because Sword of Mana, no game looks more beautiful than that game on the Game Boy Advance, and playing it is such a slog. And I got through it somehow, but I did not enjoy myself at all. It'd be nice if we could have everything.
How was Adventures, by the way? I believe you played it and wrote about it for us.
I think Parrish reviewed it, ultimately. He wasn't so big on it. I really enjoyed it. But then again, I played it as a mobile game. I knew what to expect, and for what it was, I really enjoyed it. So I can't exactly not recommend it. It had had a fantastic soundtrack, and that's one thing I'm looking forward to, is I know the new Secret of Mana will remix the soundtrack. Had new text, new dialogue, stuff like that, and I thought it was fun. I had a good time. Had some great artwork, like all the redrawn stuff by I think Hassan, however you pronounce his name. He's a fantastic artist. I just love his work. But yeah, sure, go for it.
It's got voices now. Aren't you looking forward to voices for all of your Secret Mana characters?
Not really.
I didn't even remember they actually had names. I was like, I just called the sprite Sprite. It was boy, girl, and Sprite.
Yeah.
Okay, we have some quick hit headlines to hit before we go on. First headline of the moment: Call of Duty WW2 beta has apparently split the fan base between those who prefer the quote-unquote classic games and those who prefer the newer games like Black Ops and such. My feeling on this is that I am a historical shooter fan, but man, Call of Duty WW2 just does not interest me at all, guys. I don't know. I'm just not feeling it because it's just the same Band of Brothers stuff that went out of style 10 years ago. I don't know.
Yeah.
Really quickly.
It's like, as Shulk would say, on opposite day, I'm really not feeling it.
Indeed. Destiny 2 PC beta, on the other hand, is live right now, and everybody is loving it. They're saying that it is the game that should be waiting for because it blows the console version out of the water with its beautiful 4K graphics. And I gotta say, Mike, we saw it on the show floor and the difference was apparent.
Wow, no kidding.
Yes, it's super pretty at 1080p or higher and 60 frames. just
Chef's kiss, moi.
it's so good. And Destiny 2 on all the consoles will always be 30 frames per second. And I can play at 30 frames per second. I'm not a hard stickler. But if I can get 60 frames per second, I mean, why not? So
I don't know if I would wait. So Doc wrote an article for us saying that he considers possibly that Destiny 2 on PC will be the definitive version. I am not so sure. I think the community will be smaller and more hardcore, but it will be really interesting to see how those two shake out. Next headline, Microsoft keeps the door open for crossplay. Crossplay is a big deal. Could you quickly explain, like I'm 5, Mike, like what the heck is going on with this whole controversy?
all right, so basically, the ground level of this is that Microsoft is losing the console battle this generation, which means they start to become nicer. As happens with any company, once you start losing, you become nicer and smarter and more attentive to the needs of consumers. In this case, that means that Microsoft is open to allowing cross-network play between gamers on Xbox One and people playing on PCs, which is something that we have not classically had for a host of different reasons. Some dealing with patching, like on Steam, developers can release a patch immediately. On Xbox One, PS4, and Switch, you have to send that patch to Microsoft, Sony, or Nintendo for them to vet it before it can be released. So in this case, basically, we've had different silos of play. If you played on PS4, you couldn't play with Xbox people. If you played on Xbox, you couldn't play with PC people. And Microsoft has started slowly moving towards this idea of, well, why not let the Xbox One play with PC people? So we have, I believe Rocket League has cross-network play. Minecraft is working on cross-network play across everything except for Sony platforms.
Yeah.
And a couple of other games are moving in that direction. But the big stumbling block here is Sony, who, of course, holds the current market leader position and does not want to open up for cross-network play at all.
A total reversal from last generation.
Yeah.
In a lot
Correct.
of respects, where the PS3 was the much more open platform than the Xbox 360. And in fact, they had Gabe Newell come out on the stage during E3 when they announced Portal 2 for the PS3, and we're basically like, yeah, we're tying it directly into Steam, whatever. It's cool.
And that's why I started with the bottom level is that Microsoft is losing. This is not like a Microsoft is being a good guy to being a good guy, or Sony is just being a bad guy to being a bad guy. It's the fact that they have specific market positions, and the loser will always do the best. It will always put forth that extra effort to try to claw back to the top.
Mm-hmm.
But that's how you stay on top, is you put on that extra effort. Okay, last headline. Mike, a while ago you wrote an article wondering who would be the first publisher to make their own PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, and the answer turned out to be Rockstar, which put out essentially a PUBG for GTA 5 called Motor Wars. Really quickly, thoughts on that?
I figured it was going to be Activision and Call of Duty, but this is a good second place.
Good on them for moving so fast on this, I gotta say.
Yeah,
right, and it's smart for GTA Online because it's saying, hey, you don't have to go play that other game. You can stay right here and continue enjoying and spending money and making GTA Online the most profitable thing ever since League of Legends. And it's very smart, and I'm still waiting for that either a Blizzard or a Japanese developer to take that Battle Royale style and give it a better aesthetic.
Nintendo and Mario characters fight to the death.
Yes.
Yeah, or something. Like anything
A dream
in
game.
that. Like I said, I was playing with a bunch of Battlegrounds games with a bunch of industry people, and is the Family Chicken Dinner. Please watch it. It's beautiful. It's on GamesBeat on Fridays. And the servers went down, so we switched to Overwatch, and just the night and day difference in the aesthetic between the pretty stead and stoic Battlegrounds and the bright and colorful Overwatch. I was like, wow, whoever gets to this first, like Battlegrounds with a better aesthetic, is going to make so much money.
Yeah.
All right. And finally, an interesting thing that happened at the end of last week was, well, we found out what Half-Life 3 would have been.
Yeah, kind of.
Yep. Mark Laidlaw posted a blog that he titled Epistle 3, which starred somebody named Gertie Fremont.
Yeah, that's great.
And essentially laid out what the story of Half-Life Episode 3 would have been. And I'll let you go ahead and read it in its entirety, but it essentially is closing the book on that version of Half-Life 3, I suppose, because Mark Laidlaw used to work for Valve. He ultimately ended up departing. And a lot of people are seeing this as, well, RIP Half-Life, because it's not Counter-Strike Go, it's not Dota 2, it's not something that you can turn into an esport, because, God, everything has to be an esport now. And Mike, the question that you posed around this was, do we even want Half-Life 3? And I'm sure that you have a take on this one.
I think at this point, the Valve that made the Half-Life games as those great mechanical and narrative experiences probably doesn't really exist in that same form anymore. And Laidlaw has been gone from Valve. But it's worth noting that a lot of the other Valve writer people have left.
Yeah, like Wolpaw's
in the
gone.
past. Yeah, Wolpaw left. His compatriot left. Jay Pinkerton left a while ago. So a lot of their writers have also gone away, which to me signals that like that sort of like single narrative game is not something that Valve is particularly interested in now.
Yeah.
It's dying an art form in a lot of respects.
Yeah,
I was just
it really
talking
is.
to somebody about how weird it is to play a game like Uncharted Lost Legacy, which just feels like a throwback in a lot of respects. The $60 10 to 12 hour game that tells a story, and then yes, it has multiplayer, but yeah, you're done. You're putting it aside now.
Yeah, it's really kind of a shame, but I think if we do get a Half-Life 3, everyone will go monkey like the way they did like with Beyond Good and Evil 2. But then you're going to look at it and say, is this what I want? And of course, we don't know what the story is with Beyond Good and Evil 2 yet, but a lot of people are saying this isn't really what we wanted. So it could be a monkey's paw, so to speak. And I think that'll happen with Half-Life 3 down the road. I do think it's coming, but it's not going to be the Half-Life 3 anybody really necessarily wants. Whether it will be something we want, whether it will turn out to be something we want, maybe, who knows, but I wouldn't bet any money on it.
Could you imagine Gabe Newell walking out behind him the Half-Life symbol appears, and everybody's going, "Oh my God, it's finally happening!"
Like 50
and then it goes,
times bigger than
"Global
Final Fantasy VII.
Offensive," the MOBA.
Oh no!
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Or these days it'd be like a card game. It's like
Half-Life, like card game.
Half-Life, the car game.
Oh my God, he would I know Newell fanboys love him, but I think that would just destroy him in their eyes.
Yeah.
People were spamming Dota 2's reviews with negative Steam reviews. Could you imagine the backlash if that actually happened?
Oh my God!
It would be horrible, and it's weird because I think part of the issue here is Valve is known for having a not normal corporate structure with the folks on top saying this is what's going to happen. Instead, they have a bunch of very smart people who sort of self-organize and create interesting projects, and of course they have the money to just go and do that. But it also means that there's no one saying, okay, so we're going to commit to making a Half-Life episode 3 or a Half-Life 3. And so it just never happened. And the longer it doesn't happen, the larger that task becomes.
Yeah, exactly.
And no one wants to be the person to start it and fail or start it and not even reach there.
Yeah, that's totally true. It makes me wonder, though, what the writers were doing this whole time. They must have just been kind of had to be depressing for them, because I'm sure they wanted to get on with it, but it takes many hands to make a game.
Well, I think the thing that's really frustrating is, okay, so I'm not a Half-Life fan, but the story is unresolved.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So back in the day, TIE Fighter had an expansion that ended very clearly on a cliffhanger, and the evil defecting admiral was still at large. There were still a ton of things to be resolved, and if they had just ended there, that would have been extremely disappointing, right? Because I want to know what the heck happens next. And thank God they ended up resolving that story with TIE Fighter Collector CD-ROM, and I could get on with my life. They did not resolve the X-Wing Alliance story, which ended on a cliffhanger as well. After you destroy the Death Star, there's your uncle, I think, ends up defecting over to the bad guys, and they very clearly lay the groundwork for an expansion. But then the bottom completely fell out of the space simulator genre, and that was that. So to this day, I'm like, I want to know what the heck happened in X-Wing Alliance. I'm so sad.
Well,
so these millions of people who played Half-Life Episode 2, I mean, outside of reading the blog, are not going to get any resolution, and that stinks. That's terrible.
Yeah, well, all I can say to the Half-Life 3 fans are good. Welcome to the ranks of the Mega Man Legends 3 fans. We had it, and it went away. I
mean, that's an even crueler tease, right?
That was terrible.
They had been announced. They were working on it.
We had footage,
and then dead.
Gone. Poor Mega Man's still on the moon, and he's not coming down.
Yep. And Shenmue fans, up until just recently, like a year ago, they didn't have anything, and I mean, they're still book fans. I've been waiting for George R.R. Martin. I mean, I gave up on the series completely. And Pathak Rothfuss is still working on his book 3, and I'm just like, come on, man. So I mean,
Caty, what are your thoughts on this?
So I'm like you. I'm not like a Half-Life fan. I tried, but I feel like I tried after games had caught up to it, after games had gotten on their level. So in a way, it wasn't super impressive, even though I know it was impressive at that time. So I never got around to beating Half-Life 2. I never played the first one. But I feel like Half-Life 2 especially kind of reinvented first-person shooters. They made them super narrative focused, and games like BioShock and other like it kind of did the same thing, but did it better, there's a huge sense of place and these really incredible characters and yada yada yada, and kind of games have moved on, and that's just kind of the standard now, you see narrative first person shooters everywhere, and some of them are really good and some aren't, and there's games doing really interesting things, and I feel like if people want a Half-Life 3, they're going to be expecting something that does the same thing, that reinvents the modern shooter and makes it really compelling again. And that's a pretty hefty standard that I feel like fans will be holding that game to, because it has to be basically the greatest game ever again, which is what people still hold Half-Life 2 as. And in a way, it's not that I think shooters have reached their peak, but I don't know if with all the writers gone, can Valve even do that again, It's if we see another Half-Life game or something in the Half-Life series, I feel like it'd be something like Portal, where it's not it's in that realm, but it's not a Half-Life game per se. So I don't think I don't think that's ever going to happen, and if it does, it will be shocking, and I feel like they have to have the same writing team on board somehow, but I don't see that happening anytime soon, especially now that Valve's basically just a platform. They're not really a game developer anymore. Like, they're making Artifact, and that's super rare, then they're doing Dota. But other than that, I don't see them. I see Dota as, like, their big thing now, not the Half-Life series or the Half-Life name.
You gotta take your hats off to Valve, because the way that they've seamlessly reinvented themselves over and over again, from game developer to platform holder to now major esports company.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they're adaptable. I'll give them that.
They have just constantly been ahead of the trends, and good for them. But and I get that's like Half-Life 2, I think, was originally built in part to promote their source engine, right? Their second source engine, because they wanted to, I don't know, sell the engine, that kind of thing. And obviously, and it had a really interesting set of physics, and you had the gravity gun and all that stuff. And I mean, having physics in Half-Life 2 was a big deal back in the day.
Yeah, the gravity gun was huge news.
And as you were saying, Caty, it did kind of reinvent the first-person shooter to some extent, because you had already seen their brand of really interesting narrative storytelling in the original Half-Life. Everybody always points to the first time you're riding in to the Black Mesa facility, and the way that it imparts so much information so completely seamlessly without having to rely on cutscenes and all that. It was amazing for 1999 or 1998. But while you are right that shooters have moved well past that, and games like Call of Duty and such have continued to move the bar, yes, Call of Duty Modern Warfare did raise the bar in many respects. I think that there's something to be said for these characters, these beloved characters, getting some closure. People love Gordon Freeman.
Cool.
People love Alex. Yeah, like these characters. Yeah, these characters are iconic. Yeah. They are some of the most beloved characters in gaming, and it really stinks to not see them get closure of any kind. And even if they released Half-Life Episode 3 using the old Half-Life 2 engine, I think a lot of people would be like, well, at least we got closure.
Yeah. Give me a book.
Would they feel the same if it was Half-Life Episode 3, the tie-in novel? the tie-in source engine web series?
Oh my god, web series. It takes me back to 2006.
Oh my god, so get Red versus Blue to do it. Like the Rooster Teeth guys.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. There's a lot of source engine animators out there. It would be the sequel to Half-Life Consequences and Full Life Consequences and Half-Life Episode 2.
It's like
There's
that.
A Half-Life. Oh, sorry.
I was going to say, there's also the Half-Life comic Concern that someone used to make using, I think it was Jerry's mod, and that was fantastic.
Exactly. See, and it
was hilarious.
That's how.
And that had closure. That finished.
I think if anything, Wolfenstein has proven that the first-person shooter, the story-driven first-person shooter, is not dead, far from it. And not only that, can end up really breaking through and becoming just really beloved and really something that people really enjoy and continue to talk about. And yeah, it's a one-off thing. It's not a freaking platform, but it can still matter if it's done really well. So in that respect, I don't think that Half-Life 3 needs to reinvent the wheel, as it were.
Yeah, I guess so. I just feel like people expect that more so. Like, they're expecting this to be, like, an amazing, incredible, like, one of the best games ever type thing.
Yeah, but I think they prioritize narrative, like, first and foremost. I think they'd want to see resolution before anyone invents anything.
I was going to say there is a Half-Life 3 game jam going on right now where independent developers are, like, using the blog post to kind of create their own Half-Life 3 in a way, which I think is like a really clever idea.
That's cool.
Is Half-Life 3, so is Half-Life dead? Is this it?
I mean, the fact that you got Portal and Portal 2 before they even, like, hinted at Half-Life tells me that, like, they had an idea for a mechanic and they decided to make another game for it instead of making a Half-Life game. So
yeah, I agree. Like I said, I think it's certainly dead as we know it, and if we get anything to tide us over, it's going to be like something we just don't recognize, and we might be happy, we might be sad, probably sad.
It's a gift to fan fiction writers.
Oh boy, finally, G-Man time / Gordon Freeman. My time has come, people.
Yeah, no, that's why the names are changed, but I mean that's it. Mike Laidlaw gave you your closure.
Yep, that's what you're getting.
This is what it would have been. You can imagine it deeply with your mind's eye, or some source animator will do it, in animation. But I mean, I think that's it. It's done.
All right.
So what needs to happen is a bunch of fans need to get together and start creating essentially their own fan project where they are making this story into a fully realized FPS, and then make it so good and so polished that Valve ends up picking it up, and we can call it Half-Life 3 Mania.
Oh, that'll never happen.
Half-Life Mania.
I'd play Half-Life Mania.
Oh, I'd play it, but it'll never happen.
One of the reasons I could never really get into Half-Life was dang head crabs.
Oh, those things
Too
are creepy,
much.
man. Yeah, I can't take them. One thing I always loved about Half-Life is that it's based very heavily upon the Mist, which is one of my favorite short stories ever.
Mm-hmm.
So, and so's Silent Hill, actually. So, hey.
Is it? Is
Yeah,
it really based on those?
Which Mist or...
Half-Life.
Yeah, Half-Life is based on... Black Mesa was originally going to be called the Arrowhead Project.
Oh.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Have you read The Mist?
No, I have not read
You
The
should,
Mist.
it's
Isn't that Stephen King?
It's Stephen King. It's a short story, a novella. It's really good. It's funny how many, games, when you look back on them, how many games were inspired by the story.
They turned it into a movie.
They did. The movie was okay, but...
The movie was just okay. Yeah. I always liked Half-Life's sense of humor.
Yeah, it's very funny.
They had the pet head crab that they removed the beak.
Yeah.
So just kind of...
Kinda hung
attaching itself and kind of going uselessly attacking you, but it ends up giving a big old head crabby hug.
Yeah.
Wow, I had to look that up, Nadia. That's some trivia I didn't even know.
Oh, I wrote about that. Was
man.
one of the last things I wrote for 1UP back in the day, was about how Stephen King's stuff inspired video games, and yeah, The Mist was a big one.
Oh, man, you should write for USgamer. So 1UP literally can't even be accessed anymore.
I know,
so
it's so sad. I should.
we can.
I should.
Retread it.
I can. I totally will.
We have 10 years worth
Especially
of material that we can retread.
Especially with Stephen King's It coming.
Yeah, good point. Which how Earthbound takes a lot from too. So
Wait, what?
you didn't know that?
Mike's learning so much right now.
I totally believe that, because it is the story of a few kids who are banding together to fight kind of an extra dimensional evil thing,
Yeah.
and that's basically what Earthbound
a
is.
formless thing. Gygas and It have a lot in common.
And to my knowledge, you should write that, by the way. And to my knowledge, but to my knowledge, none of them are psychic.
Paula is close. Or are you talking about the kids in It?
The kids in It.
Oh, I can't remember. It's been years since I read it, but I don't think so, no.
I thought they could all talk to one another with their minds.
I think if they can't talk to each other with their minds directly, they can definitely kind of project each other's kind of feelings almost. They do share something.
I just hope that the It movie gets rid of the final scene, probably the grossest thing I have ever seen.
I think
in a
I know
book,
what you're talking about.
in the sewers, the way that they escape.
Yeah.
Please get rid of that.
I
for the
can't
love
see
of
that.
God.
I know Stephen King has admitted that he was on a lot of drugs when he wrote It, so...
I read It to my girlfriend back in the day, and when we got to that scene, we just kind of stopped and looked at one another and went, ew.
Yikes.
Let's just skip some pages.
And with that, the US Gamer Podcast is a US Gamer Podcast. You can find us on iTunes and various other platforms such as SoundCloud and YouTube. Please subscribe to us. And if you're enjoying this podcast, and I hope you are, I hope you have not just been hate listening to us, because that would make us very sad. Please drop a review and say some nice things about us, because it really helps our visibility. And, tell your friends, because we like hearing... we like people being able to hang out with us. We enjoy chatting about the video games. And of course, we stream every Tuesday and Thursday on twitch.tv. Mike and Caty streamed Mario plus Rabbids on Tuesday. And this Thursday, we are going to be streaming the new Mortar Wars from GTA 5. So that's going to be pretty fun. And we stream every day at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. That's a USgamer lunch hour. Guys, it's almost September. We are going to be extremely busy very soon. Are you ready?
No.
God, no.
Come on, I need more enthusiasm from you, team. Come on.
I mean, yeah.
Ooh,
I'm so ready.
Sleep is for the weak.
It's gonna be fun, and I'd like to countermand something Kat said. If you want to hate subscribe, please do. Subscription still counts as a subscription.
Nah, we hate you if you hate listen to us. Go away.
Who the hell hates
You don't need your
things?
subscription.
Don't you have time? Your time is valuable. Who hate listens to things?
By the way, you can follow me on Twitter at _Catbot. You can follow Caty on Twitter at YouMakeCaty. That's YUMECATY. Nadia at Nadia Oxford. And Mike at Automatic Zen. We'll be back next week, as always, on Wednesday to talk about more video games. We've got so much to cover. I just got Metroid Return of Samus in the mail, and I cannot wait to talk about it a little bit. I am so excited, and yes.
You got Metroid Return of Samus, but I got Knack 2.
Oh my
I
god.
think Mike's the winner here.
Mike's got the real
It's on.
game of the year.
Knack 2. Hey, I don't want to slag too much on Knack 2. It's clearly a passion product by Mark Cerny. Oh my god, he's waving in front of the camera right now. It's totally a thing that exists.
We love it.
All right, everybody. We'll be back next week to talk about Knack 2 and Metroid Return of Samus. That is a threat that I intend to keep. We'll be back next week as always. And until then, thanks for listening. See ya.